All right, welcome to the meeting of the Charter Review Committee. It is 6:05. We'll call the meeting to order. Lisa Bazanson will not be joining us tonight, so is there someone who can take notes?
That's
great. Thanks so much. We do need to review the meetings of the May meeting, which we weren't able to approve because the people who were here, we didn't have a quorum of the people who were at that meeting, if you remember correctly. So, I don't know if, I think we do now. So, do you have a copy of those May minute meetings? I apologize for not sending them out. Anybody not have them, I guess?
I do not have a copy of them either.
All right, then we will hold off on those for one more month. I will take in consideration of the June minute meetings, which I believe you all have as well. And I believe we can vote on those. Does anybody have any comments on the June minute meetings? June meeting minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, June minute meetings have been approved. Rich, you weren't here at the last meeting. We did spend a lot of time going through the results of the survey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I owe you a printout, basically, of some of the results.
Okay.
But I think the main thing that we kind of took away was that there's a lot more interest in exploring a mayoral form of government than we anticipated. I think over 30% of respondents were interested, to the point where I don't think, we didn't feel comfortable, we can just say, never mind, we're not gonna think any more about this, we don't have to.
Yeah.
So, we think there's gonna be need for a little bit of discussion about, do we need to go down this road a little bit further? So for the members of the board, what I'd like to do in September, for our September meeting, is invite a former colleague of mine who was very involved in the Braintree government before it became mayoral, and is now involved in city government in Weymouth since it's become a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he'd be able to give a really good perspective of what some of the benefits and challenges are. And I have another person in mind who might be able to do something similar, who again worked or served in a town, served in a city, and is now a town manager in a community. Just to give us an idea of some of the challenges they face. So if that's okay, I'd like to reach out and maybe try to schedule for our September meeting.
That's great. Sounds good.
And of course, we'll invite the public, get some thoughts, see if there's anything that we're missing. Maybe it's something really great and we just need to look at it some more, in which case this takes a whole different turn for the committee. I wouldn't be sold, but it would require, I think, some conversation. So while we're on that topic, to hand out, well, I did hand it out to you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll hold up some information just about the various forms of government across the Commonwealth, including which towns have a town manager, town administrator, mayor, et cetera, et cetera. Open town meeting versus closed, representative town meeting. That was helpful. And then the other document that's in there is it in there? Oh, I sent it out. No? The second one, I thought I printed out the second one. Out of
Oh, the other one
the other one, so I'll put that one to you as well. Were there any other findings, learnings from the survey that Rich should really know about? And again, I'll send you the information I neglected to.
No worries.
A lot of comments just about perceived problems with how people are appointed. with budget and how information gets out to the public. Some of the things we had expected to hear. Were there any other surprises?
I don't remember anything that just stood out as shocking to me.
I think the one other note was that people would be interested in having an elected zoning board of appeals. So I think that was one other thing. Okay,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I'll be sure to get you those results and you can take a peek and see anything that grabs you. So at the bottom of yeah, so the document that I gave you, this third page is kind of the smaller page. I think at the bottom, what's the other thing we do? We spent a lot of time going through a number of suggestions from the Board of Selectmen that we received.
That's right.
And those were tacked onto the bottom as well. And there were gonna be some, I was supposed to, some requests for some more information on a few of them.
If it's enough time.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple we want to get some more information about, such as background on, you might be able to do this, but the emergency management director. How that's traditionally been filled versus how it should be filled. Has it, my understanding is that it's traditionally just been the police chief has been.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. And so I want to be more of a, well, it can be whoever the town manager feels is the best for that position.
Well, I think right now in the current document, it's the police chief.
Okay.
My philosophy or thought process, as we were, discussing things to add, I think having the senior person, the senior chief in the public safety, whether it be the police chief or the fire chief, whoever that senior person is should be the head, and then the assistant should automatically be the other one, whether it be the fire chief or the police chief. That way both entities share responsibilities and are familiar. So when there is a changing of the guard and one of the chiefs leave, the other one will step up, the next one will roll right in. It'll be a seamless transition and everything can kind of continue to flow in an organized way. When there's chaos like that, it's not the time to introduce yourself and say, hey, we're in the middle of doing this. It might be a good way to go.
Okay, that makes sense. We were going to ask them for a little bit more information from their perspective, as well as their thoughts on how to appoint committees. They see it as a need to tighten up, but they didn't give us any specifics, so we'll see what they think. There was also discussion about having a residency requirement to be on a board or a committee, full-time residency requirement. And then they also, this wasn't a suggestion from the entire board, but a member having the Board of Selectmen approve all department heads, major hires, and police and fire appointments. Which would be a significant departure from the strong town manager role we currently have. And I'd be curious as to why they'd want to single out police and fire, not also library, why also DPW, all the other positions.
I would assume that both chiefs would have a fair amount to say about that.
Yeah. Yes. And the Board of Selectmen does have a way of approving department heads currently. The charter does allow them to have basically 15 days after an appointment to nullify it effectively. And if they don't take a vote, it's
An
approved.
tacit approval, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this list is pretty updated, and I did start the process of putting more information onto the website. We ran into a problem with some of the logins, so that's getting fixed currently, but that stuff is being pulled together, going to be able to put on the website, so that people can go on, they can see this list of what we're considering, they can have our minute meetings, they can have access to the documents that we're using. All right, so before we move on to the next topic, anything else in terms of follow-up from our last meeting or two?
No.
All right. So our homework was to start actually putting some text together of some of these issues that we've identified, so we can at least start talking about it completely instead of theoretically. this is a process we're gonna be doing for the next 6 months. And so the idea is that by our meeting in January, we'll have our list of changes that we'll be recommending formally. And then we can have a couple public hearings in January, February, and then we'll be ready to go for town meeting in April, hopefully. And if we decide that we need more time to work on things, then we have that time, where we're way early in this process.
Absolutely.
So,
That's the beauty of starting this early, that
Yeah.
we've got plenty of time.
but it does mean that ideally that we start to have all this text pulled together mid-October, so that we can start taking some votes into consideration and finelining it, redlining everything. So I have 3 that I've put together, and if anybody has any other ones, we can also discuss those. So it's these documents.
Okay.
And I'm not wed to this format, but it made sense as I was kind of going through it. So the first one is the required annual training. And this is something, just for a refresher, that the current town manager has made more of a priority, which is making sure boards have access to training. Some boards are better at it than others, but this is more of a requirement to make sure that all boards kind of are taking advantage of this. So the first one is, I think, every year we have to do state ethics training, no matter what. Every year, I think there's a requirement that we review open meeting law. And then, on planning board, there's citizen planning sessions that we can go to. Conservation has a lot of training. Board of Health has a ton of training they do. There's usually something for everybody out there. Even if it's rec department, there's some sort of training that they could do, or some other professional development opportunity to take advantage of. So what this would do is to basically codify in our charter that anybody who serves on a multi-member committee, which is, basically every committee in town, has to do 3 things, which is complete the ethics training, open meeting law training, and then some other professional training as defined by that committee. And then a record of that would be kept in the town clerk's office for review. And the idea being that, if, as a member of the planning board, I can't be removed from the planning board because I don't complete my open meeting law training, but voters may want to know that next time I'm up for election. This person has not completed any of their training. I don't know if that's a disqualifying feature. Or the Board of Selectmen, when they're reviewing the appointments to the Cultural Council, and they say, well, this person has not completed any of their training, maybe we should appoint another person instead. It's a consideration for that process. So that's what this text says as of now, that they would go through those 3 things. And again, the professional development training will be kind of defined by the committee itself, because it's silly for us to define it. It would be, as a planning board, we can say, all right, if you do a session of the citizens planning training, that counts, or whatever it might be. So this would apply to people appointed by, 232 is a finance committee because they are specifically appointed by the moderator. It's specifically called out. 315 because this is for elected town offices. And 710 then is a catch-all for everything else, all the other boards, everything appointed by either the moderator or the Board of Selectmen. School committee, I think, is a different animal. I think they're kind of required to. They have their own kind of requirements. So this would not apply to school committee, because like I said, I think they have a lot of other requirements. For all these different things, I also included the cost that would be associated with implementation. And yeah, there would be costs for training sessions for committee members. So usually it's not that much, but if we're serious about this and we want board members to start to do this, there's going to be a few costs. I'm not talking $5,000 per seminar, but there might be $75 to attend a training session somewhere, or do an online version. And then the town clerk's office, depending on how much we are putting an extra burden on them. So does that require any extra time? I don't know, but that is just something to consider. So willing to hear any thoughts, concerns. Feel free to take home and digest as well.
So what happens if I don't go to the training?
Nothing.
So why,
So-
I don't mean to be.
Yeah,
but
no,
what-
that's the question.
Why should I go then?
So what would happen is that it would be registered in the town clerk's office that you did not complete the training as required in the town charter. And it means that when you're up for appointment or election, that's just publicly known. Like,
Okay.
if I don't complete my ethics training or my open meeting law training, nothing happens to me now.
Mm-hmm.
But the public, there's no way for the public to know that. So this is at least putting on the record, no, I've completed this training, and I've taken this seriously, and you can see it here. So if it's something that we're serious about, then, this is one way of doing it. But no, there is no real big stick. This would be the biggest stick I think we can do.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the Board of Selectmen reaffirm people on certain committees every 3 years or something of that nature? Could we put that they cannot be?
We could. Probably. I don't, the question that I'd have, and I think I should make, I did make a note. Under state law, what is the way that people can be disqualified from serving on town committees?
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, that's why, like, as an elected person, I can't be disqualified for the ballot because I don't take open meeting law training. Like, there's only very couple specific reasons why I can be disqualified from the ballot. And I don't know what those are, but I think one of them might be like committing a felony. Maybe that's something.
right.
Or committing a felony related to the office. I might not be able to run election again.
Filing the election campaign thing part of that too? No.
So that's one of the research pieces of that is what reasons could a town prohibit someone from serving on a committee? And I don't know the answer.
I guess I'm just worried that down the road that, for instance, you're on the planning committee or planning board, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody gets a finding they don't care for and they take it to court,
Yeah.
and they say, all these people haven't been to the training they're supposed to be, how can they make a decision?
Yep. Yeah, and so 315 says, failure to complete annual training shall not result in disqualification from the ballot.
Right.
But it's more just public should know, has the ability to know.
Okay.
But if we don't want to go through I'm perfectly okay with, this is why we're discussing this.
Mhm.
Does this make sense, or is it just a lot of headaches for not really accomplishing much?
I mean, I think it's good to have the training in every year, but,
And I think it's some feedback we've already gotten is that they want people to be accountable. And unfortunately, like, we're putting in that they're be accountable because they're supposed to do these things, but again, the stick is only so big, right?
Yep.
Um,
So the next one is OML as a minimum standard. This one's might be a little bit complicated, but I'm trying to explain my thinking on this. So right now, the law, the charter states that committees have to abide by the open meeting law, which is appropriate. My argument is that yes, committees should follow the open meeting law, but then they should also strive to do more. So, for instance, under open meeting law, committees have the ability to not have public comment period. My feeling is that for the town of Abington, committees and boards should have public comment for each meeting. But that they can certainly set rules to make sure it doesn't get crazy and out of hand. So it's the public comment period only lasts 10 minutes, and each speaker only gets 2 minutes, and they can't speak more than once, and it has to be about something that's on the agenda, and it can't be about a complaint about a personnel matter, those sort of things, or it has to be respectful. It can't be disruptive. It can't whatever those rules are.
Mm-hmm.
That as long as people know what those rules are, then that's what they should adopt. So every year the board would every year the board would go over what their policies are. So I think that's another whole other piece of this, is that boards don't have policies like this. So it would be adopting a policy that says this is how we conduct our business. This is when the public comment period is. Another one is clearly dictating how members of the public can participate in meetings. Is there always going to be an opportunity to ask questions? Is there going to be a way to submit comments before, after, during deliberation? What's the best way of doing that? Again, that's not clear for every committee. And I think that as a minimum, that should be allowed in the town of Abington. And again, this goes above what's required under open meeting law. This doesn't have to happen, but again, we can choose to say, no, this is a policy that we want and think it makes sense.
It might be something as easy as adopting some sort of parliamentary procedure, whether it be Robert's Rule of Order or something along those lines, that this is how we're going to conduct the meeting while we're open meeting, and have that person who is conducting the meeting, running the meeting, handle those types of things and make sure that it's respectful and shut those people down when they need to be.
Yep. It's exactly it. It can be just as simple as we follow Robert's Rules of Order. Okay, well now we know where it starts.
Right, because I was gonna say, if we don't do something like that or suggest something like that, does the select board or town manager, somebody come up with a boilerplate so that if a committee doesn't adopt it, this is the town's basic, formula?
We could do
or
that.
policy?
Yep, we could certainly do that.
Because you could see some committees might have something more specific that they want to have in place if they can review it every year, but others might just need the boilerplate.
I know that there's controversy about public comment period. Trust me, I understand that not everybody likes it and is comfortable with it. It's really awkward to have to sit while someone yells at you for 10 minutes. But I have a concern when the public can't go to a meeting and say, this is an issue, by right, kind of.
Right.
And again, if it's done respectfully and productively, I think that there needs to be allowed. The other concern I have, and all due respect to the Board of Selectmen, having the public comment period before issues are brought up is weird, because you don't know what the issue. So if you go to a meeting because something's on the agenda that seems interesting, you can't comment on it because you have no idea what they're actually talking about. And then they may or may not let you comment during the actual part of the agenda. So I think that's just as problematic as not having public comment at all, because then you're not able to really contribute to the discussion. I think that's part of the public involvement, is just spelling out the rules ahead of time.
So I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So I've been to some meetings, public meetings, where they have a citizen speak at the beginning on their agenda, where somebody can get up and basically talk about anything. But then they have a public comment at the end of the meeting, so like you said, so they can react or have comments about whatever might have gone on and been discussed. Are we focusing more on the public comment or the citizen speak, or both?
Both.
Or both? Okay.
Both. So there are certain things that require public comment.
Right.
Like when we're reviewing a site plan on the planning board, public comment is, I think, required statutorily as part of the process. Like, we can't prohibit people from speaking out on a proposal. Like, they have to have time to speak and give input.
Okay.
But not everything that comes before town boards has that statutory protection. So if, I hate to pick on the Board of Selectmen, but if a license comes up for renewal, or if they want to change a policy, or there's not necessarily a guarantee that the public can be part of that process. And maybe they should. Or at least have an opportunity for 5 minutes of public comment or something.
Right.
Anyway, the third piece of this is adopting policies that seek to maximize public outreach and awareness of board and committee discussion topics that may be of interest to specific stakeholders through whether it's postal mail, email, website, social media, phone calls, text messages, face-to-face, signs, whatever. There are some issues that come up where you have to do a public notification. You have to send certified mails to a butters, you have to do a legal notice, etc. But, you know, that's flawed just because it only reaches a certain specific few. So for instance, there was a property issue in Abington where all the parcels around it were commercial. There were direct abutters with commercial properties, but the people who were interested were abutters to the abutters, and they weren't necessarily notified or didn't have to be notified under law, but they were the ones who were really interested in what was gonna happen. So, like, those are the people we should be reaching out to, or finding out ways to alert people. And again, the town manager, I think, has done a really good job making, you know, outreach possible. You have email lists you can sign up for, they're putting out agendas. But the next town manager could not make that a priority. So the idea is to say that, no, this needs to be a priority for every board. And I know the concern is gonna be, well, you know, we don't have time or money to do that. Well, this is part of the budgeting process now, where you need to include money so that if you need to send out mail to 50 people, you can do that. Or if you need more administrative time, that's part of the budget request, because they are doing a task that is required in the town charter. Like, this isn't a nice to have, no, this is required under the town charter. That's kind of why I want to put this in here. It's no longer an option.
Courtesy.
Yeah. Like, no, this is a point of the town, is to figure out ways to make sure people know what's happening and get involved and have an opportunity to be involved. And I think it lines up with what we're hearing from people in these surveys, which is that people don't feel like they know what's going on. So if it means, if we can solve that problem because the town sends out 20 letters to people instead of 5, I don't think that's a big ask. And the fourth one is requiring committees to work with the town manager and Outcam to make sure their meetings are recorded. There's a lot of committees that don't have their meetings recorded, and in this day and age, I don't know if that's the way you want to go. So what this would require is every year at their meeting, well, standard is that you need to figure out a way to have your meetings recorded. So we'd have to work with Outcam to make sure every room has that capability, because, you know, we're down here in the Ware room today because other things are happening in other rooms, and they brought a camera down to record it. Thank you very much. But not every room has a camera and is set up for that. So part of that is, all right, how can we make sure that all the meeting rooms in town hall, senior center, library, schools, wherever people tend to meet, have the capability of being recorded. And then, if you have a meeting, it's going to be recorded, basically. Mm-hmm. Your board can vote to not have their meetings recorded, but you have to state a reason why it's in the public interest not to, and then have a supermajority vote of the board on an annual basis. So the meeting after town election, if the board wants to say, we don't believe our meeting should be recorded because there's a lot of sensitive personal information discussed during our meetings, and we don't think that's in the public interest. Okay. They do a supermajority vote, and they don't have to record the meetings. And then, of course, there's also exemptions for if there's a storm and the technical broadcast system is down, or if you can't get the people, the person who normally does it is sick, or some other reason, that's fine. It's not like you're in a big violation, but you can't have every meeting someone be sick, or every meeting you can't have a technical problem or a weather problem. But
Well, given the current world, we might also want to think about something with the Zoom and situations like that.
yeah.
Hopefully that'll be the distant world.
A lot of corporate business is being done over Zoom right now, so I think we can do town business as well.
Mm-hmm. And that can be recorded.
Yeah.
Right. Seamlessly.
Right.
And so there is a cost. The cost would be, what is the cost of increased public outreach and engagement? Figure that out. Do we have to help Outcam procure cameras and microphones? I don't know, but that's part of the cost of doing this. And then the third one I put together, and I know I'm talking a lot, I want to hear from more people in the committee.
Doing fine.
This one is regarding the absence of moderator. This might be more of a technical thing, but considering some of the interpretations I've been hearing lately about some of the charter issues, I think like this is a small change that should be included. So this again, to remind people, it permits the appointment of a deputy moderator to step in the case of the absence or disability of the moderator. What we've seen is the moderator sometimes needs to recuse himself for professional reasons. And a strict reading of this, I don't know if that falls under absence or disability. So this just clarifies this to include need for recusal as a reason why the deputy moderator would step in. There would be no cost associated with it. It's just a clarification. Again, there's been a couple interpretations lately that seem very strictly, narrowly interpreting what's in the charter. So I'm surprised this hasn't kind of been flagged also. And again, this is not to be interpreted as critical of the town moderator. He certainly, I think in my opinion, does the right thing by recusing himself on those matters. I think it's just to make sure that we all agree that this is an appropriate use of it. So, again, this is not end of discussion on any of these. Please bring them home and digest them and think about them and come back with notes, and we have 6 to 7 months still left we can talk about it.
While we're discussing the moderator, would it be maybe in our best interest to add that we have an election for a deputy town moderator so that's not appointed the evening of?
That's interesting. Okay.
Just a thought. That way you know who the person is, and you know, in the event of that person's absent, then maybe the moderator can assign a deputy moderator for the evening, but knowing who that person is at all times, and they know the responsibility of being there, and we'll be up to speed with everything going on as well.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it currently the deputy has to be ratified by town meeting, but it certainly can change meeting to meeting who it is.
Right.
Okay, interesting. I'm just gonna write this on this list.
Is that still, that's still 2.2?
Oh, a couple quick other notes that I found out while researching this stuff. I believe my reading is that the town can decide whether to have an elected versus appointed zoning board, conservation commission, etc. That in the MGLs it's spelled out as appointed by the board of selectmen. But then, and there's a link to it, and I'll send it out when I send out the electronic version. That gives towns the ability, it sounds like, to decide otherwise. So, I think there is a way.
That's the zoning, you said?
I believe any board can be appointed, can be switched to an elected board.
Change to elected.
I wonder what the associated cost would be to that. And then what's the time and the gap when you have people that either aren't showing up and are removed by the Board of Selectmen, or resign for a change in their work or something that takes them away from being able to perform those duties? How do you do it? You know?
Yeah, it would be just like if, I resigned from the board, the planning board, which is then, it's a meeting of the planning board and the Board of Selectmen to pick a person.
Yep.
And we'll be talking about that issue at a future meeting.
But I'm also wondering
In generalization, I hope.
Yes.
how many people would want to go through the hassle running for a committee? Because I'm questioning whether I would.
Yep. Yep. I can tell you that when I ran for the planning board, whoever ran for the seat before me basically didn't show up for most of the term. Why that was never filled or addressed, I don't know, but they've been operating with a 4-man board for multiple years. So it does happen. People run and then decide they don't want to do it. So does anybody have anything else they want to bring?
Well, I just wanted to go back to the first one you brought up, which was, I already forgot here.
Annual training.
Annual training. I mean, we could change language in 713 too, which is removals and suspensions, to have something in there that, because right now removals and suspensions uses good cause language, but we can add to the good cause language something about being up on whatever 7.1 or 7.10, whatever that is. So.
Yeah, I gave some thought about that. My concern is I'd want to put accountability in there without it also being used as a weapon.
Okay, I understand.
So,
that.
for instance, if you say that, somebody doesn't complete their open meeting law training because they're sick,
Right.
but that person also is not like by, an appointing board, next day you go in there and say no, suspended, versus when the reappointment happens, you have until that date.
Right. But yeah, I think there's some way to do it with the language of having a hearing involved, maybe, because there's hearings involved in parts of this. So, but yeah, we can talk more about that.
Yep.
That's a good point. You don't want it to be used in that.
And I think it's a fine line on how this is crafted, on whether or not it's a public embarrassment of, well, you didn't have time and you didn't get this done, so
Right.
we're outing you,
Right.
and
Right.
now you're leaving the board. Obviously, these are all volunteer boards, and
Yeah.
people are trying to do their best to do what they can do, so.
Yeah, and that's the thing, this is a volunteer board.
Right.
I sit on the soccer board, and we're required by Mass Soccer to do certain trainings every year. It can be a couple hours, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours to do all the trainings. They're really important trainings that you really should do.
Oh, absolutely. I
But-
coached for years, yes.
But it does have people pause to say, well, I just want to volunteer my time. I don't just sit through 4 hours of training.
Right.
But yeah.
4 hours is being generous.
Yeah. All right. So what else do we have? Anyone else?
I had looked at section 9, the procedures for the agendas and the meetings and so forth,
Okay.
specifically, because right now it says the minutes shall be approved, voted on and approved within 60 days following the date of such proceedings. I'm thinking to put a timeline in may not work. I'm on the Cable Advisory Committee, and we don't meet every month necessarily. I'm trying to meet every quarter,
Okay.
because up until now, we're gonna start looking at the Verizon contract, but once that's settled, the Comcast contract's been done, it's good for 10 years. The Verizon will be in the same boat, and basically, the reason I hold the meetings is to have anybody in Abington come and say, this is what's happening with the cable. So I was thinking, instead of voted on and approved within 60 days, voted on and approved at the next scheduled meeting of those attending that meeting, something of that nature, instead of putting a strict timeline.
That's interesting.
And that would encompass the May minutes here, because we didn't have all the people we needed who were at the May meeting. So, and there's also those rules. These rules minutes shall be a public record kept in place, convenient to the public at all reasonable times, and copies shall be available in the town library. Well, I'm thinking it would be more efficient that each committee is required to put the agenda and the minutes in the town website. And one could say, well, what happens if I don't have a computer? You can still go to the library and access their computer and get onto that. So I asked specifically, would there be a limit of the amount of documents that would be submitted with the minutes if necessary? And I was told there is no limit. So that wouldn't be a holdback either. But I think if we did everything electronically, You know, I could sit home at 11 o'clock at night if I wanted to and read the minutes of this committee or any other one. And I wouldn't have to be, going to the library or whatever. Because not all the committees have been faithful in fulfilling that requirement either.
And I think we live in an age where digital's, then you could print it out, you could have it on your phone, you could have
Exactly.
it, right, yeah.
But I just think if the minutes and the agendas are uploaded, that way it's there, nobody can say, they were in the library and somebody took it. Because you could do that easily enough. Not that anybody has. But again, some of the committees haven't been as diligent as they could be in keeping their files up to date. And that way, I don't know who in the town government could keep a track on it.
Well,
That's another thing, I don't know.
who would post
I would
them?
imagine it's the town manager's office, but they have enough to do without having to call committee chairman, so I don't know how you do that either.
Yeah, I would say, I know towns that have, the head of IT is in charge of this because they're the ones who post to the website. I know of other towns where all committees have to turn a digital copy into the town clerk, so they have the digital copies, so I don't think we have to figure that part out necessarily, like we come up with a policy and they'd come up with a practice.
Yeah.
That
We
would
could
be an
just- Town
additional cost.
manager's office,
Right.
leave it like that, and
Right.
then he could, or she could delegate to whomever. But I just worry that some committees aren't keeping the records updated, and someday it may come to,
Yeah.
there's certain committees that are more important in that respect. And those do actually, like planning board, they do keep them up to date, so.
Yep. That's where it helps to have an administrative assistant that can, as part of their duties.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just,
But not all boards have that.
Exactly.
no.
Yeah, so that's a great question to debate is, are we at the point now where having hard copies available is not the best way of serving the public? That it's better to have online repositories,
Right.
provided, of course, that those repositories get copied over somewhere over time or backups and that,
I have, and this is an assumption on my part, that the town has the same and similar worries that their records are in jeopardy, so they have taken steps to protect everything.
because I'll say one of the great things about some of our public records laws is that you can go into the library, or you can actually go next to the town clerk's office, and you can read the minutes from the 1804 town meeting in Abington.
Right.
Like, it's there, these are the minutes from the meeting. It's great to have those copies and those continuous copies, so, yeah, whatever allows us to keep that continuation. Yeah, I'd love to see the language on that. Regarding the board minutes approval, I like the idea of going from days to meetings. I want to be best to say, must be approved within 2 regularly scheduled meetings.
That's
just
fine.
because that way, like the situation we had
Yeah.
where we already had one, weren't able to do it, we did it the next one. I think the library's issue was, if they skip a meeting or if they don't have a quorum,
Right.
that's why they wanted 75 days, was
Right.
because then that would encompass at least 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
But like your board is exactly a great example where you meet quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think the sewer board is a similar thing. I don't think they meet on a monthly basis either.
Mm-hmm.
Although with the sewer board that'd be hard because you don't want them to have 2 meetings a year.
Right.
So they're uploading their minutes once a year. But yeah, I think there's a way to work it.
But how do you approve minutes without having a meeting?
Right.
Yeah,
That's the catch-22 of it
Right.
all.
yeah. But if we have committees that are meeting, yours being the exception because the work is so much just
Mm.
doing the contracts. But if we have committees that are meeting twice a year,
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe that means something. If that need to continue to have that committee. Which is to say, I don't know if that exists. I'm just saying if a board is meeting quarterly, then that might be something else to look into. All right, Did you have another one, or is that?
That was,
Okay. So I'll send you the template for this, and then we'll just put them into,
Okay.
use this as a general template,
sure.
so it all looks the same. Did you have one?
I didn't finish working on it, so before the next meeting, I'll send out something about budget process, town manager qualifications, and vacancy. There's the vacancy section in the 3s, so.
Okay. So that was one thing we did at the last meeting, was kind of pick some areas we may want to focus on. So I don't know if there's anything you have in particular, you particularly feel strongly about, that you'd like to work on some text for.
I'll work on some text for the emergency management
That makes
situation,
sense.
as well as I know some other things with the Conservation Commission. We've talked about having an actual commissioner for a couple of the boards that would add some continuity between the boards, such as the planning board, the conservation board, and things of that nature. So I think having some language and discussions on that would help streamline the business of the town
Agreed.
and make things easier for the public.
I had a note in here about the appointment process being 10 versus 20 days. Is that in the,
I think that's
so what you're dealing with?
That's what I was talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I did a real poor job leaving myself a note. And couldn't remember what it was.
Hold on a second.
That's 314. Okay.
Yeah, 314, vacancy in office, I'm trying to look. Because in some sections for some boards, it's 20 days, some it's 30 days. So we're looking to try to get those.
Okay.
But we also wanted to talk about the idea of if you have a 3-member board and then a 5-member select board, and like how that vote works. I'll come up with some ideas on that.
All right, so you're doing all of the committee and board vacancy ones.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because the other one's like, what, 7 something?
Yep. Pete, were there any others you wanted to try to tackle?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
I guess the only other thing I just wanted to make sure on, you were talking about bringing in some speakers about having a mayor. Can we also talk town council?
Yes. Yes.
Because I think that would be more.
Yeah, so let's, if we're gonna have, bring in town council, we'll make it efficient and pull together any questions that you've formed over the last few months that we can start to ask them, so that we're not just giving a bunch of stuff in January being told, no, we can't do that. All right, so let's schedule our next 2 meetings if that's okay. We'll try to be more proactive about reminding people more than a week out. I don't think I'm around that last week in August, but would people be around the 18th? No, we're getting a lot of summer vacations.
I'm around the 18th.
Same here.
I've got 2 days that week, but the 18th itself, if that's what we're looking at, I'm available the actual 18th.
Okay, so we'll do that. August 18th, I'll let Lisa know as well.
6?
6 p.m.
Okay.
And then in September, I know this is looking really far out. The 4th Thursday would be the 22nd. Anything that jumps out at anybody about that date?
22nd's good for me.
Yep, good too.
All right, so the next meetings will be August 18th at 6 p.m., September 22nd at 6 p.m. September 22nd meeting will hopefully have some guests who maybe can talk to us a little bit about mayor versus town manager. And I'll say that if it becomes more and more interesting to switch a form of government, which again, I don't think we're at that point, then that would certainly change our time frame for doing all this work.
Right.
Big time. So, just to put that out there. Then we're talking a 2024 proposal versus 2023.
Do we think that Scott or the select board is expecting a response to their letter?
I dropped the ball on that one. I need to send them a letter from those.
Well, I
questions.
know we have questions, and I didn't know if they wanted us to to discuss anything in particular. Let's get the questions first, I guess, right?
So maybe I'll also invite them to come to the next one. We had another person, I don't want to say their name just in case don't want to make it known. A past member of the committees has some thoughts and wants to stop by and say hi.
That's great.
So I'll have her stop by in August as well. Have some good conversation. Any other thoughts, comments, anything anybody wants to discuss? I do appreciate everybody taking time out of their July to be here. So, otherwise, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.